Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, A Day in the Life of a Laboratory Operations Professional. This webinar is a part of an ongoing webinar series on careers in bioscience, produced by BioCT in partnership with the Yukon Center for Career Development. My name is Lisa McGuire, and I'm with the Yukon Center for Career Development. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You should see your attendee interface on your computer desktop in the upper right corner. You're listening in using your computer speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenter by typing your questions into the questions pane on the control panel. You may send in questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session of the presentation. Today's presentation is being recorded and will be provided within 48 hours. I'd like to now introduce Dawn Hocevar, President and CEO of BioCT. She will introduce our guest presenter for today. Dawn?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Dawn Hocevar, President and CEO of BioCT. BioCT is Connecticut's voice for the bioscience industry in the state. We work with all aspects of the ecosystem to assist with collaboration between government, academia, and industry to create, grow, and retain talent and companies in Connecticut. This monthly webinar series is focused on careers in the industry, the types of jobs needed, and personal stories on career paths and those skills as well. Please check BioCT's career portal for jobs and recordings of these webinars, and sign up for our news alerts to stay on top of industry activity at www.bioct.org. Today's presentation will be from Todd Arnold, Chief Laboratory Operations Officer at Semaphore Genomics. Todd is passionate about Connecticut's bioscience ecosystem, and as you will see from his presentation, he will describe his educational background, followed by his nonlinear career path and evolution in the industry. Todd will also share his current responsibilities as a Chief Laboratory Operations Officer and a little more information about Semaphore Genomics. We hope that this is an interactive session and encourage your questions, especially during the panel session. Thank you for being here, and now I'll turn it over to Todd Arnold.
Thanks, Dawn and Lisa. Hi, everyone. So I really appreciate your taking some time out of your day to spend some time with me. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity to share with you my career path, some of the things that I learned along the way, and hopefully will give you some ideas on the direction that you can take with your own career path and some options that you have that you may not have thought of as you work through your academic career and think about the next stage, which is to get a job. So at any rate, without further ado, I'll go over the discussion topics which Dawn introduced already, which talk a little bit about my education, the route that I took through my educational path, my career path, and talk to you a little bit about some of the key elements in my career path and the importance of being flexible as your career evolves. And then talk a little bit about the company so you get an idea of what we do, and specifically an overview of the Semaphore Branford site, which I, along with two of my colleagues, were fortunate enough to set up back in 2014. And then talk a little bit about my daily and weekly and monthly activities as the Chief Laboratory Operations Officer, and give you guys a flavor of the activities and the diversity of those activities that I do on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. And then talk a little bit about my passion, which is STEM education and the Connecticut bioscience ecosystem. And talk to you guys a little bit on how you can leverage your STEM academic career, the curricula therein, the networking that's available at your college and university, and also use the networking that you can learn about at BioCT to learn about opportunities that exist within the Connecticut bioscience ecosystem for both your education and your potential career path. Excuse me. Okay, so my education path started back at Indiana University quite some time ago, and I pursued a Bachelor of Science degree in Biological Sciences at the time. During my tenure at Indiana University, I had initially thought that I wanted to pursue medical school, but when I was in my laboratories, I was like, gee, this laboratory stuff is a lot of fun, and you get to learn a lot of interesting things. You get to do things where science actually is happening right in front of you, right in your hands. And the bug bit me in terms of working in the laboratory. So to that end, I pursued my PhD at the University of Georgia in Athens in molecular biology and genetics. And those of you who are sports fans may think, well, wait a minute, he went from a basketball school to a football school. That actually didn't have anything to do with my selection, although the weather at the University of Georgia was much nicer than it was at Indiana University in Bloomington. And my interview was in December, so that may have had some element of my selection for my graduate school. But at any rate, when I was at UGA, I worked on several different projects, primarily on gene expression in eukaryotic systems. And what I realized during that time was, despite my interest in the laboratory, I was really interested in problem solving, generally problem solving. I mean, if any of you have spent any time doing experimental science, you know that problems come up all the time. And the key is to being able to solve those and move forward in a timely fashion. So I realized as I was working in the laboratory there that I was a problem solver and wanted to move into a different area of research. So I moved into work looking at structural biology and pursued my postdoctoral fellowship at Harvard Medical School. Again, when I was at Harvard, I did something different, which you'll notice is something that evolved in my career path. I was always looking for something new and a new challenge. And the advantage of being in a STEM curriculum is that you can do that. And I'll point out how that can happen for you in your particular career in a moment. During my postdoctoral fellowship, I spent some time doing structural biology, as I said. But again, there was the common theme of being a problem solver and trying to find ways to enable people to do things easier, and more specifically, how I could do things more easily in terms of protocols, in terms of potential pieces of equipment that made things easier for me to ask the questions that I was asking during my postdoctoral fellowship. From there, I took my first job at a division of Millipore that was known initially as Amicon, and Amicon was purchased by Millipore. And when I was there, I started doing some work on isolation of nucleic acids. I was like, yeah, I did that as a graduate student. I did that as a postdoc, so that was very comfortable for me. But the thing that was interesting is that there was an issue with one of our products. And the issue was that the product wasn't performing in the hands of the customer the way that it should. So again, here's an opportunity to use those problem-solving skills. It's very important for you to hone as you move through your academic career and then ultimately in your professional career. So spent some time at Millipore, enjoyed my time there, and had an opportunity to do some very new things at 3M in a division called QNO, where I was able to work on some diagnostic membranes that were utilizing for nucleic acid analysis, and also did some things with microarrays. We had started in that area, and then the company decided, as I said, we started with QNO, that we wanted to try to sell the company to 3M, which we were successful in doing. During that period of time, the work that I had done essentially was absorbed into the company as a whole. So I was sort of standing there thinking to myself, now what do I do? All of this stuff has changed. I was afforded the opportunity to move in something different, which was more of an application support area, but in an area that I necessarily wasn't the resident expert. It was a lot of physical chemistry, things along the lines of isolation of and purification of fluids for things like petrochemicals and things for paints and coatings, areas that in my PhD in molecular biology and genetics, I didn't have an opportunity to learn. So you're going to notice a common theme here, which is that, despite the fact that you want your path to be straight, many times it's not. So I was able to take on this opportunity and learn a lot about myself, not only as a scientist and researcher, but also as a leader and a facilitator. And it was important for me, recognizing the fact that I necessarily wasn't going to bring technical expertise to these folks, how I could enable them to do their job better. I had an enjoyable time at 3M, but I had to admit to myself that I really missed the molecular biology that I had trained in. So had an opportunity to join 454 Life Sciences prior to the purchase by Roche, and was able to work there and enjoyed my time immensely. And again, this was a new challenge for me, and it was an exciting opportunity. And I think the thing that's important here is if you were to look at these companies and say, geez, what's the commonality between a Millipore and a 3M and a Roche? It doesn't necessarily come to the fore straight away. But I think the important thing is that at each one of these organizations that I worked at up until this time, it was important to be an effective communicator. It was important to be able to be an effective problem solver, to ask the right questions in order to work effectively within a team and to communicate across different parts of the organization. So toward the end of my career at 454 and Roche, Roche decided to close down a large division of the company, which was Roche Applied Sciences, and 454 was a casualty of that closure. So again, here I am. I'm caught sort of at a crossroads, thinking, "Geez, what do I do now?" So the opportunity presented itself to start this endeavor here, which initially started as the building of the Mount Sinai Genetic Testing Laboratory in Branford, Connecticut. It was sponsored by the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. So in 2014, was given the opportunity to start something essentially from nothing with two of my colleagues from 454. And we are now at a site that has about 55 people after about 4 years. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the site and the genesis of the site, and a little bit about Semaphore. So again, you can see that at each one of these steps in my career path, there was a lot of absence of linearity, despite the fact that this slide looks pretty darn linear. Again, what it shows is the importance of flexibility, the importance of being able to manage your career and to understand and leverage your scientific skill sets and your analytical skill sets and things of that nature. So a little bit about Semaphore, and then we'll transition into some other topics about your career path. So the company that we work for is a patient-centered predictive health company. We were launched on June 1st of 2017. It was a nationwide venture of Mount Sinai. And the Semaphore team leverages a lot of the wealth of clinical experience and world-class academic research that's done at Mount Sinai. A number of my colleagues either have joint appointments with Mount Sinai or have left Mount Sinai for the career at Semaphore. And one of the things that's really a unique opportunity here is the intimacy which we have with Mount Sinai and the Icahn School of Medicine in order to work closely with researchers and physicians and really benefit the patients. We have over 500 employees this time. We have next generation sequencing laboratories. We do research and development. We have national sales and customer service teams. Now, what you'll notice here is there are a lot of opportunities that are outside of pure science. But each one of these particular opportunities in these career paths at a company like ours will benefit from someone with a STEM training, because that scientific acumen and that scientific skill set enables you to enter career paths like technical sales, scientific sales, things along the lines of technical support, sales support, and things of that nature. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we proceed through the presentation. So we do full service testing in our laboratory here in Branford, Connecticut, as well as in New York City. And between the two of our laboratories, we do, this is the workhorse for the sequencing part of our business here in Branford, Connecticut. In New York City, we have cytogenomic testing and biochemical genetic testing in the city in New York. So it's just a fully integrated company that really enables patients to make good decisions about their health. Okay, so what we are trying to do is, as I said, this is about modeling for individual health. So what we want to do is we are enabling people to make decisions about their health based on their health data. And what we do is we take all of this information and we percolate it down into a set of guidelines that can be presented to a patient, or presented to a physician, or presented as a team with the patient and the physician. We have a very unique methodology. We have some very sophisticated algorithms that enable people to, through the course of the information that we generate through our variety of tests, allow those folks to make good decisions about their health. So essentially, we have four interlinked areas of scientific expertise. We have patient engagement, and those of you who are really involved and interested in interfacing and how your iPhone works and all those apps and whatnot, we have folks that do that. We have folks that's their job. So if that's an area of interest to you, these are the other kind of opportunities that those of you who are in the STEM field can look into. We do a lot of work with disease mechanism and biomarker discovery. We have a lot of very sophisticated research elements within our organization. And then we have very sophisticated data science and engineering. We have our founder is arguably one of the best data scientists in the world, Eric Schott, and it's his vision that is driving our company. And we also do a lot of things with multi-scale biotechnology, where we understand a lot of the elements that are critical to an organism's functionality in its lifespan. And it's this interplay of these dynamic fields that allows us to be successful and to provide the kind of insight that we need for our patients. From a career standpoint, if you look at these four elements, it's very easy to see that these require different types of discipline. And there's a lot of overlap between a variety of disciplines. And these are the kinds of things that you need to think about as you pursue your career in the STEM area and as you work through your process of your undergraduate or graduate education and you start looking for a place where you can work and grow both professionally and personally. Okay, so an obvious question is, wait a minute, you guys started in New York City. How did you end up in Connecticut? Well, I mean, there are a number of things. Some of them are pragmatic, and some of them are also about the way that the state is very bullish about bioscience. First of all, there was lab space here, and in the lower right-hand corner, you see a picture of our Branford facility, and in the lower left-hand corner, you see our Stamford facility. We occupy a floor in one of the towers there that's primarily our business team and our executive leadership team. And in the upper right-hand corner, we still occupy space on the Upper East Side of Manhattan in the Atran Laboratory and also in the Icahn School of Medicine building. Our laboratory team will be moving to Stamford. Hopefully, if we can get things moving quickly enough, we'll have that lab up and running this year in 2019, and that will be located in Stamford, Connecticut as well. The other thing is it comes down to money. Things were sort of expensive in New York City, and we came to Branford and to Stamford in terms of being able to save some money and make it more palatable for us in terms of as we were growing the business. And if you look at the third and fourth bullets, highly trained workforce and proximity to universities. Those were two critical drivers, and the list of these is not in any type of preferential order, but these are all absolutely critical elements to our selection to move to Connecticut. One of the things that we're particularly proud of here at our site is the fact that we have a very high percentage of Connecticut-based hires. We are easily north of 90% of our hires have been hired from the state of Connecticut. So that just shows you the power and the intellectual prowess that we have within the state. And it's a great opportunity for us to continue to grow that here. And folks like you who are considering your career need to recognize the fact that there are a lot of career path opportunities within the state of Connecticut. This slide has a lot of words on it, but most importantly, what I want to try to get you guys to take a look at and focus on is the fact that in the course of about 4 years, we've built a site in Branford, Connecticut with Connecticut-based talent that has the capacity for sequencing well over 100,000 samples per year. That's pretty exciting growth. And again, this has happened in the state of Connecticut in Branford. So this is the kind of excitement that's growing here. This is the kind of excitement that BioCT is working on leveraging within the state. And these are the kinds of opportunities that you all who are in your career, early in your career, or finishing up your education, these are the types of opportunities that exist in our state. So to confirm to you that we actually do have people that work here, this is a photograph of my team that was taken a short time ago, and it just shows you the folks that we have here. And again, about 90 to 95% of those folks were hired from the state of Connecticut. And the skill sets at our particular site here range from folks who can work in billing and sales, people who work in bioinformatics and data analysis. We have IT team, we have lab scientists, we have people who work in quality assurance and quality control, as well as in accessioning. And I'll give you some more details on those jobs and what you can do to maybe land one of those in the future. Okay, just very briefly, what I wanted to talk to you guys about is some of the workflows that we do here in Branford. At each one of these stages, you guys can imagine the type of skill set that you might need in order to help us with moving samples through the queue. So we do a variety of samples from patients. We do things from saliva, from blood. We do isolated nucleic acids. We do things from tumor tissue, which is in the bottom part of the upper left-hand corner of the slide. We accession the samples, and what that means is the samples are entered into our database. Everyone is no longer a name. You're strictly an alphanumeric. We have very high levels of HIPAA compliance, and we protect personal health information within the organization very, very stringently. That's a very, very important thing that we take extremely seriously. And And that's a regulatory opportunity for those of you who might be interested in that particular career path. So we have a lot of automation here. You don't get to this number of samples by doing everything by hand. So folks who have an interest in automation and interest in that type of technology, there are great opportunities for companies like ours to work on this type of thing. There are also opportunities for those of you who have an engineering interest or a programming interest to work with these types of instruments at a variety of places within the state. In fact, some companies within the state develop instruments similar to this, some of which are used here on our site. If you look at the instruments that are directly above what says sequencing pipeline, that is an ion torrent sequencer, and those are initially made right in Guilford, Connecticut. So that's right, one Metro, actually Shoreline East train stop up from where we work here. So it just shows you the power of not only the biosciences, but also technology development that exists in the state of Connecticut. Again, there are a lot of words here, but this is for those of you on the line and listening in who have interest in bioinformatics and information technology, to just get an idea of some of the data that we generate here. This is primarily focused on the data that we generate from our proton instruments, and this is eclipsed by the amount of data that we generate with our Illumina sequencers. But the reason that I use this particular example is it just gives you an idea of how all of these particular types of technology interact in an area like my company, which is a digital health company. And we do a lot of life sciences here. We obviously do a lot of biology here. We do a lot of molecular biology here. But at our company, there is a very serious interface between a variety of skill sets and particular scientific and technical jobs that are absolutely essential for us to run our business effectively. So just a little bit, if you go and visit the website, you can get more information on what I'm showing you here. Our areas of focus right now are reproductive health, as well as oncology. We also do things with pharmacogenomics to make sure that folks understand how and why they would respond to a particular drug or drug treatment. So we have an expanded carrier screen test that we offer for patients who want to understand what types of risks that they may carry if they're planning to have children. The other test that we offer is a newborn screening test, which allows parents to screen 193 potential conditions that are all treatable. This is not a particular condition that may occur back, down the road as we get a little bit older. But these are actually conditions that kids have today that, if you get this information from Natalis, there are actionable items on any and all of these particular conditions that we identify in this particular panel. And we right now have our oncology solid tumor panel, which is for folks who have cancer, and we are able to characterize the elements in that cancer in order to help folks to go down a path for a therapeutic intervention, so we can help them fight off this horrible disease. We're working on a variety of different tests for both reproductive health and oncology. So those of you who are interested in the biological sciences can recognize that this is an opportunity for you to work in the laboratory to really help patients. The thing that's exciting for me about this particular job is that for the first time in my career, I am as close to the patient as I have ever been. Essentially, we are one step away from a patient and one step away from being able to provide therapeutic intervention or to help people make a decision about their health that will have an immediate impact on their lives. And that's a really, really exciting and powerful place to be. Okay, so with that long preamble, what do you do? What do you do every day? What do your everyday look like? So this title is sort of all-encompassing, right? Chief Laboratory Operations Officer. Okay, what kind of things do you do in that role? Well, what I did for you guys is to just sort of put down a list. So, I or members of my team do these type of things pretty much on a daily basis. And we make sure that the workflow and our laboratory designs are optimized in order to make sure that we're efficient and we're accurate and we're consistent and we're reproducible. All of those things are absolutely essential in the business that we work on. There's a functionality that I mentioned earlier that I'll talk to you a little bit more now, which is called accessioning. Those folks that do accessioning are an absolute critical element in our entire workflow. They are the first exposure to a patient sample that we have. They make sure that the samples are appropriately labeled, they have the right volumes and things of that nature. So this is definitely an entry-level opportunity at a company like ours. Folks that are in our accessioning team, in terms of the degrees that they have, range everywhere from an associate's degree to a bachelor's of science degree. So this is a great entry-level position for folks. It's a great opportunity. You get good exposure and understanding of what we do, what types of samples come in. You learn about the importance of protecting people's health information and things of that nature. So it's a very, very critical part of the workflow. So we cover the entire workflow that I shared with you before in our team, and what it comes down to is when you handle that number of samples, you have to be able to track those samples, and it's absolutely critical to do that. The other thing that's a fun job that I do is in my team do is technology assessment and implementation. So what we need to do is we're constantly asking, is there a better way or a more comprehensive way to ask a question and to provide an answer to a physician or to a patient? So we are always looking at new technologies, how to bring those online, and how we best implement those into our workflow, whereby enabling us to get to the answer that we need and provide the best possible data we can. My responsibility is to facilitate my laboratory team. My job is to make sure that they have everything that they need in order to be successful. I also lead the facilities team. And I also am responsible for environmental health and safety. So those are the folks that make sure that we have a chemical hygiene plan in place, that all of the teams are appropriately trained in the use of the chemistry and the reagents that we use, as well as the safe use of any of the instrumentation and the equipment that we have in our facility. The other thing is that you have to interact extensively across the organization. It's important to talk to your legal team, so that way when particular projects come in, you have good understanding of the statements of work, make sure that we're delivering on what we need to do, and making sure that that we are meeting our end of the bargain, as well as making sure that we are getting the right things from our potential collaborators in terms of information, etc. We are involved in looking at contracts, we're involved in developing contracts, we're involved in things like service contracts, preventative maintenance contracts with instrument suppliers, etc. So, as you notice here, there are a lot of touch points and there are a lot of opportunities for those of you who may say, I want to start in the lab, but I want to go in a different direction. And also don't think of yourself as just because you have a STEM degree or you have a biology degree or molecular biology degree or chemistry degree, you have to be in the laboratory. All of these areas that I'm mentioning to you that either we do within my team or outside of my team are all opportunities for those of you who have STEM career training. Compliance and quality are absolutely critical elements to the success of our organization. They make sure that we are in line with regulatory requirements, etc. Make sure that when we do our workflow, they all are compliant. We are doing the appropriate training, making sure that the team is up to date on their training, on their annual training that they need to do for each of their laboratory skill sets. We do proficiency training to make sure that our laboratorians are well trained and they are able to execute the particular elements of our workflow in an extremely precise manner. And marketing and sales, we work very closely with them to make sure that what we are advertising and what we want to tell people we can do, we in fact can do. And make sure that our laboratory and our laboratory team is empowered and enabled to deliver exactly what we have told the customer base of what we can deliver. The other thing we do a lot of work with in the marketing and sales team is we do a lot of training and technical support if they need that with their particular customer base. And then we work very closely, obviously, with bioinformatics and IT. So with all of this, there's a lot of information that I've given you guys over the past, half hour or so, and you're probably like, okay, this is great, this is wonderful. So where does this happen? What can I do with all this information? I mean, I didn't do your career path. I don't have experience with all these things. How do I leverage what I've learned? How do I get to where I want to be? How do I have an opportunity to work at a company like Semaphore or somewhere else within the state of Connecticut? And how can I leverage that? How can I find out what career path works for me? And what skills do I need? And how do I get those skills? I think the most important thing is to know that if you have a degree in sciences or education, you could work for a company like Semaphore. And you can work in a variety of different areas. If you have a degree in chemistry or biology, as I said, you don't necessarily have to work in the laboratory. If you want to work in the laboratory, that's incredible. That's how my career path started, was in the laboratory, and then I moved into some more of a management role and a leadership role in that regard. And I think the thing is to keep mindful of the fact that, my career path included pursuit of a doctorate, and that you don't need to do that. That's not necessary for you to do in order for you to be successful in your career. It's a very long process. It's not for everyone, it's people ask me, hey, if you were going to go back and do it again, would you go back and get your doctorate again? And I would, because it was something that I wanted to do. I don't want to say it was a rite of passage. That sounds too poetic almost for me. But I think the important thing is that level of didactic and that rigor that I learned through my PhD program really served me well in the job that I have now. It gave me confidence to solve problems. It gave me the skill set that I need from a scientific and technical standpoint. So those are the kinds of things that were really important for me. Again, you got to figure out what works best for you, and I'll talk a little bit about some career paths and some opportunities that are available within the state of Connecticut for you. Another thing is experiential curricula, and what I mean by that is within the curriculum that you have at a college or university, are you actually doing stuff? And I don't mean like loading one lane on a gel of a PCR that you have run. I mean literally doing stuff, like having an experiment. I think some of the things that are pretty amazing that are happening in the state is there are experiential programs. There are opportunities for you to really go out and try to solve a problem. Universities and colleges like Southern Connecticut and UConn both have a professional science master's program. And those programs are very experiential in not only the curricula, but there's a requirement for an internship. And I cannot stress how important internships are for folks who come in and interview at my company. It's absolutely critical because the fact is that these are folks who have been in an environment very much like the environment that they'd be working in here. So that's something that's really, really important for folks to understand. That's really, really important. Now, that's not to say that if you don't have an internship, you haven't done an internship, you don't get a job. That's not what I'm saying. But I think, some of the statistics that I heard, I think it's about 70% of recruiters strongly encourage people from doing this. It's a huge benefit. And the internship doesn't need to be fancy. I mean, it needs to show that you're interested. If in the summer, across the summer, you want to, you really having, you want to see what a lab works like, offer to wash glassware and things of that nature. See what a lab looks like, and see how it goes, and see the types of things there. There are a lot of internship opportunities, and at UConn, your your career office, excuse me, your career office has guidance and information on available internships. You can see those on BioCT as well. So those are available in the state. Both, a lot of the colleges and universities are very, very active in partnering with companies in order to help with the internships. And I think one of the things is the cartoon that I have chosen here is pretty representative of what you want when you have an employee walk in the door. You want them to solve a problem. You want them to be able to demonstrate that they can do the job. Not necessarily at IKEA, but that's good representation of what we really need and what we're looking for in folks. The other thing is communication skills and things that, in the written and verbal word. You have to be able to articulate effectively. You have to make sure that it's not only message received, but it's message understood. You have to be cognizant of your audience. You have to be engaged with your audience and make sure that you understand that what they need and how you present your data. Because as someone who's trained in the sciences, if you go and present at an organization, at a company, not everyone probably has the level of understanding that you do in terms of the problem that you're trying to solve with a particular product or workflow or solution that you're putting in place. So you have to make sure that you target your message so everyone in the room understands it. Because if you're trying to get funding from the finance group or a buy-in from the CEO, it's really interesting that you have to be able to sell the idea, right? If I can't sell the idea and I can't get support for this particular idea, then it's probably not going to fly. So you have to not only say, prove that you're good at scientifically, but you have to convey things effectively to people. And the other thing is attention to detail is really important. I think one of the things that's most important is when you all are applying for a job or something like that, have someone else look at your resume, not only for its content and its layout, but for things like spelling and some malapropisms, for example. One of the ones that sticks in my brain is I've seen a number of resumes that come across my desk that say, I am an extremely detail-orientated individual. Well, you're probably not, but those are the kinds of things that you may think are silly, but actually send a strong message to somebody who's going to hire you. Because if one of the things they need in a job is someone who's detail-oriented, they're not going to need somebody who's detail-orientated. So those are the kind of things that you need to be very cognizant of as you go out and you look for a job and you try to solicit yourself for these various places and try to get yourself into a position at a company where there's a really good opportunity for you to grow professionally and personally, as I said. Another thing is critical thinking and problem solving. That's one of those things that, people are like, well, how do I do that? Well, it depends on the curriculum. If we go back to the experiential curricula and things of that nature, if tests and curricula are developed in a way to challenge you to think and to solve problems, that's going to be critical because, as I tried to explain to you, my first job out of my postdoctoral fellowship was, here's a problem. We have a product that's not performing appropriately. I had used the product as a graduate student and as a postdoc. I didn't know how they built it. I didn't know what was involved in it. I didn't know what an ultrafiltration membrane was. So these are the kinds of things you need to be willing and able to be flexible and to show that you have the ability to think critically about a problem and solve it. And be resourceful and realize what you know and what you don't know. I think it's as important to be self-aware as to what your knowledge base is, as well as your gaps. And there's nobody who knows everything about everything. And one of the most important things is to recognize where your areas of strength are and realize that it's okay to ask for help and say, I don't know. It's never a problem. The other thing that's important is how well you work with others. Oftentimes when I'm talking to people, it's how well people play with the other kids. It's very, very important to have a collaborative skill set. And there are other things that are along with that collaborative skill set. You've got to be able to work across groups and be able to do different types of data handling and analysis tools. I mean, those are very important things. And those are important as you're working in a team to be able to take a look at your data, to be able to do the analyses and things of that nature. It's very, very important. And teamwork. If you've got a project or a program at the college or university where you're in school to work on team-based programs, it's absolutely critical because it's really important to recognize how everybody brings a different perspective and to respect that perspective and to understand that you go so much farther together than you do alone. It's very, very important, and it's something that's very critical to you as you go through your career. And I think I've pretty much beaten flexibility to death here in our time together here during the webinar. But guys, I cannot stress that enough, because invariably you'll have a plan, you'll be on the straight plan, and oh my goodness, something will happen where you have to sort of regroup and change direction and things of that nature. You've got to be not only willing to do it, you have to show the ability to do it. You have to show the ability to change gears very quickly on the fly. Okay. So one of the things I talked about a little bit earlier was the types of opportunity that are available in the state of Connecticut. So what this slide is to show is to just not a laundry list of activities that I'm involved with, but sort of to reiterate the importance of networking. Where at every stage of your career, I am involved in working with a lot of different people because the most effective way to solve a problem is to do it together. Not to say that you don't want to be independent thinker and have these capabilities, but it is amazing what you can get done together. And it's amazing the opportunities you can learn about by different touch points. Because if you know people in BioCT, if you meet somebody in BioCT, that person is going to know someone somewhere else. So if you're involved in campus organizations where there's a lot of networking and you're learning and you're interacting with a variety of different people, keep doing it. Just keep doing it. Because if you look at the list that I have here, I mean, there are a lot of touch points all across the state. You've got BioCT, and Dawn Hocevar talked a little bit about what BioCT does in the state. I work closely with the Connecticut Business and Industry Association and the Bioscience Growth Council. That's a group that touches all kinds of businesses that, people don't even think about how businesses work together. I'll give you an example of things that you might not think about. So in our laboratory, I talked to you guys about the importance of maintaining the facility, because if the facility's not up and running well, then we don't generate any data, and our data is our product. So it's important that you understand that, golly gee, I might need an electrician, or I'm going to need a general contractor, or I'm going to need to figure out how I get a plumber. And the thing that's interesting is that what you do, and by meeting those people, is there are all these different touch points. For example, we did some build out here in Branford using a specific contractor, and a colleague of mine who I knew through BioCT said, "Hey, Todd, we're expanding. Yay, there's another opportunity for more jobs in the state of Connecticut because this company is expanding." They said, "Hey, can you recommend a couple of contractors for us who do a good job, who can help us build out our facility?" Great. Right there is a great opportunity of the power of networking. And what that did is that gave my colleague Mike a name, some concrete evidence, because he came by our facility and looked around and saw what it looked like. And he knew that our facility looked good. He knew that I made a recommendation based on fact and not feeling. And it was a great opportunity for them. They selected this contractor. Their build out looks great. Their new facility is awesome. And they're hiring people to fill it. Similarly, from an educational standpoint, I am active at both Southern Connecticut State University and UConn in order to help grow the STEM pipeline. I don't want our biggest resource to leave the state. I'm selfish, I admit it. The biggest resource we have in the state is the power of the brain. We don't want all of our smart people to go elsewhere. We want to give them more and more and more opportunities for intellectual and personal satisfaction in the state. And that's why I work, very, very hard in working with the PSM program at UConn and BioPath and the PSM at Southern. And I work with a lot of the community colleges to help to make sure that the curriculum that they are presenting to their students enables them to get a job. Ultimately, that is the responsibility for folks to do. And I'm biased, granted, it's a job both in an industrial setting like where I work, as well as in academic institutions as well. And it is absolutely critical to do that. And the networking doesn't lie just with these groups, but it's also with Connecticut-based companies, in the example that I gave with my friend Mike, where he was able to network with me in order to identify somebody who can help build out his laboratory facility. I think I want to leave you with one thing to remember, and this is something that I found quite some time ago, and it's absolutely true, okay? I think the thing is just recognize that it's a journey, no matter what stage you are, whether you're in your academic career, trying to finish up your undergraduate degree or your advanced degree, or anything of that nature. And even for me, what I'm doing now is something completely different than I've ever done before. Not very many people get an opportunity to build a team from nothing. And I think one of the things is I give a shout out to my team, because I am really privileged to lead a team like the team that I have here at Semaphore. And I think the thing that's most important is to recognize that every day is an opportunity for you to learn. Every day is an opportunity for you to grow. So I will leave you with those thoughts, and I am more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Well, thank you, Todd. We're now going to begin answering the questions submitted during today's presentation. As a reminder, you can still submit questions through the questions pane in your attendee control panel. Our first question relates back to the very beginning of your presentation, Todd, where someone asked, from a career management perspective, why do you think you had the opportunity to shift from one specialty to another? I think you mentioned that you were in one area and then you were tapped to move to something that was to something that was completely sort of different for you.
That's a great question. I mean, sometimes those opportunities come about because of changes in business strategy. I mean, the one example that I gave specifically was at CUNO, right before we were purchased by 3M. One of the things that was important, I'll give a brief preamble here, was to make sure that the company looks lean and well and efficient in terms of being able to get it to be purchased. And some of the things that we did was we were able to build out some membranes and to build out a microarray platform that was really a great performer, but we unfortunately missed the business window. But that's a story for another time. And what happened is the company made a very, very strong decision to sort of shut that down and go back into the core competency. And the really cool thing about that was everyone within my team was able to find a position within the organization. So there you have not just one person that was flexible, but about 18 people who were flexible. So I think what it shows is that if you can demonstrate the ability to solve problems, if you can demonstrate the ability to communicate effectively, if you can demonstrate the ability to deliver on your milestones and things that are put in front of you, you will be given other opportunities to put yourself in an area where it may not be comfortable to you. And also, if you demonstrate your ability to potentially move out of the proverbial comfort zone and try things that are different and stretch yourself a bit, I think that's the important thing, and I think that's why I was afforded the opportunity. Is that to be candid with you guys, one of the things that I had to work on was something, and one of the colleagues that I ended up leading as part of this applications team had about 35 years experience in petrochemical filtration. I mean, I knew petrochemicals went into the engine of my car. That was about the extent of my understanding. So here I'm leading a guy with 35 people. It wasn't that I was an expert in that field. It was that, you demonstrate the ability to do things that bring value to the organization. I think that's the most important thing.
That's great. Thank you. I think, Dawn, did you have a question that you saw come through?
Well, just one thing I wanted to mention to everybody that someone just put into the chat, so thank you very much. But Connecticut, our legislature approved last year, and it went into effect, I think, January 1st. But there is a credit of $500 annually for up to 5 years for STEM graduates working in Connecticut. So if you want to look that up, I think it's Connecticut by the numbers, tax credit for graduates. I mean, you can kind of look that up, but just wanted to make sure that you were all aware of that.
That's great. Thank you. Do we have any other questions? All right. If not, I want to thank you, Todd, again, and thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar, A Day in the Life of a Laboratory Operations Professional. We've really shared some insight on opportunities in Connecticut and beyond, and we really appreciate the time you took to share your experience with us. This webinar is a part of an ongoing webinar series on careers in bioscience produced by BioCT in partnership with the Yukon Center for Career Development. The next webinar in this series is scheduled for March 29th at 10 a.m., A Day in the Life of a Government Affairs Professional at Beringer Ingelheim. Please regularly check BioCT's events calendar at bioct.org/events, sign up for BioCT news alerts, and/or the Yukon Center for Career Development's calendar at career.yukon.edu/events for more information about upcoming webinars. Once you leave today's webinar, you'll receive a survey on the presentation, and we would appreciate it if you would complete that and provide your feedback. You will also receive a follow-up email within 48 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. Feel free to share that as well. On behalf of BioCT, the Yukon Center for Career Development, and our presenter, thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.